Going back as far as Beatlemania and so much more, we as a society are well aware of how quickly a musician or band can sweep the world with their popularity. It'll get to the point where people will practically do anything in the name of their musical idol. And while being a big fan of something is fine and all, that level of obsession is a slippery slope, a slope that can lead to some pretty weird stuff. Though today, we're not just looking at a single musician or band. No. This phenomena as a whole is one of the most widespread I've seen in a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today we're talking about K-pop. Hello everyone, this is the RPG Monger, and welcome to the Fandom Files, the bi-weekly series where I take you into the darkest corners of each and every fandom. Now, out of all the fandoms I've covered so far, I'll say right now that none have ever been as appalling as this. Because while everything I've done before this consisted of things like video games or anime, K-pop idols are living, breathing people just like you and me, making all the things people do to them even more despicable. The pressure that is put on K-pop idols is absolutely enormous. Just from the industry alone, the amounts of horrifying headlines like K-pop idols actually being forced into prostitution by their companies is awful. I could, and may, make a video on how terrible the K-pop industry can be to its idols, treating them like products instead of actual human beings. Of course, the cases aren't universal, but in general, idols are under an unbelievable amount of stress. So you'd think that throughout all of that, they could always fall back and rely on their fans for support, right? Well, unfortunately, that isn't always the case. While still being the overall minority, in a fandom as big and international as K-pop's, the amounts of bad fans within it top most other fandoms out there. Though to start off relatively light compared to the darkest crap I found, let's talk about everyone's favorite fandom staple, shipping. There really is nothing wrong with it. I mean, as long as you don't actually persecute people because you disagree with their ship, it's all in good fun. Or at least it is when dealing with fictional characters. K-pop is a whole other scenario, because while shipping fictional characters produces no harm to those said characters, when people do the same thing except with real breathing people, they don't realize how adversely it could affect those said people. Take the whole situation surrounding Bijou and Hansol of Top Dog, two idols that were vehemently shipped together by their fans. Doing it in online forums is one thing, but with these plainly stupid individuals not only asking them to kiss at fan meets, but even saying they were a cute couple to their faces when they went live solo, it actually ended up hurting their friendship as a whole. I mean, just imagine it. How would you feel if people shipped you and your closest friends together? At the very least, you'd feel incredibly awkward around them. Point blank, meaningless ships are in no way justification for you to actively make someone's friendship crumble. And this leads into another really big issue. You do not own these idols. They're not your little playthings that you can do whatever with. Like everyone else, they make their own choices and have their own thoughts. Shocking, I know. So with that, let's move down a level to the next circle of hell, Sasaeng fans. In South Korean culture, Sasaeng fans are overly obsessive fans of an idol or public figure, usually engaging in acts that completely violate that idol or figure's privacy, like Stalker fans for example. And before I go into some of the worst cases involving these terrible types of people, I have two stories from a fan that has actually had experience in the K-pop industry with these people. For these stories, let's call our protagonist Elisa. In South Korea, all K-pop idols go through a training period before they become full-fledged groups. At the time, Elisa along with 8 other girls were in this exact training period. Well, after some discussion, all the girls decided that they wanted to do some dance covers of songs by Twice, another 9-girl group. Though considering Twice had just released a song called Likey, they all decided to learn the choreography of it and perform it for a crowd. It all went pretty smoothly too, but considering they weren't an actual group, they had no security whatsoever. Elisa had already seen other dance groups perform the exact same way, so she didn't really pay it much thought, a decision she'd end up regretting greatly. So as she was walking into the crowd along with one of the other girls, we'll call her Skyla, a random guy just straight up grabs Elisa's arm all of a sudden and starts telling her how she was prettier than any other idols he'd ever seen before. And it gets worse because after not responding to him, the guy actually started screaming in her face, even raising his hand in preparation to hit her. By now, the guy was full on shaking Elisa as she was on the verge of crying, but thankfully, Skyla pulled her away in the nick of time. It wasn't even over either, since the guy actually began following Elisa until she got into the van along with the 8 other girls. I mean, I don't even think I need to explain why this grime was in the wrong. Physically harassing anyone is just something nobody should ever do. But while that story thankfully ended with the girls getting away before he could do any real harm, this next story contains a way worse Sasaeng fan in comparison. So before leaving the industry, one of Elisa's best friends, we'll call him N, was actually under the same entertainment as her. And since they were under the same entertainment, they both had the same types of passes to get in the building. Well, one week, Elisa's just went missing all of a sudden, and unfortunately, it had not fallen into the best of hands. As N went into his dorm one day, which was on a completely different floor from Elisa's, he actually caught a fan attempting to not only steal some of his shirts, but his underwear as well. Of course, with this, security was called immediately, since she even woke up one of N's bandmates while trying to hide within the dorm. And by the time she was dragged out by security, the girl was kicking and screaming about how she adored N and would marry him one day. Even though Elisa now teases him for it sometimes, it still shakes N up to this day. Being a fan and having a crush on your idol is one thing, but when you go as far as to invade someone's privacy, you, my friend, are completely delusional, and frankly kind of stupid. Well, now that you're all acquainted with the concept of Sasaeng fans, let me show you how awful they can get. Let's start with JYJ's Yuchun. Now, he's already dealt with plenty Sasaeng fans in the past, but this really takes the cake in how creepy they can get. Basically, these people actually set up CCTV cameras in his parking lot for the sole reason of being able to see more of him on a daily basis. I can't even imagine the kind of hell this guy goes through with people like these. If it were me, I'd be terrified of even leaving my apartment. I mean, just look at Junsu, another member of JYJ, where while he was relaxing in a restaurant, as normal people do, actual hordes of Sasaeng fans were pressed up against the windows just to be able to see the back of his head. Hell, you know what? How about this? Let's play a good old-fashioned game of you cannot make this shit up, where I give you 5 scenarios and you have to decide which one out of the 5 is fake. Buckle up, kiddies, because this really is going to be a rough one. People have always sent fan mail and gifts to their favorite idols, there's no doubt about that. But in the case of 2PM's, can't pronounce that, he actually got a letter written in, oh man, the fans' very own menstrual blood and pubic hairs. Ugh. Though then, take the situation with 2 members of Junior when they were in the middle of a 7-vehicle car accident, all because Sasaeng fans pursued them in their own vehicle. Oh, and that's not the only one involving car crashes. Take the popular group Big Bang, where instead of getting into a car crash, Sasaeng fans actually blocked the front, back, and sides of their van in a vehicular standoff. It was only resolved when the members of Big Bang were more or less forced to take pictures with those said fans. And these situations aren't excluded to male idols either. Jessica, an idol that has really become popular in the last few years, noticed a man following her when she got out of a taxi. As she picked up her pace, so did he. And thankfully, she did make it to her apartment in time, but right as she did, she heard him trying to open the front door behind her. her. Good thing the door had an electronic lock. And back on the more repulsive side of things, one day when FT Island returned to their apartment, the place had been completely ransacked by Sasaeng fans, with them going as far as to leave their literal shit on the apartment floor. Well, alright, if you actually made it through those nightmare scenarios, which one do you think is fake? If you guessed 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, then guess what? You'd be wrong. In the end, every single one of those situations are real. You really cannot make this shit up. Though now, it's time to descend to the next circle of hell, consisting of a group of people you can't even classify as fans. I give you the anti-fans. Basically hatedoms on steroids, anti-fans will stop at nothing to harm or even end the careers of K-pop idols. If you thought Sasaeng fans were repulsive, then just you wait, because these people are the actual scum of the earth. Remember that rule about never actually eating food from strangers? Thankfully in this case, it wasn't forgotten. One time, a fan gave a box of cake to Hangang through his staff. When opening it, however, he found that the box not only contained bags of blood, a knife, and a stabbed photo of himself, but the cake itself also contained lethal poison in the form of powder. And while he thankfully wasn't harmed, some other idols haven't been so lucky. While she was a member of Baby Vox, this particular idol was constantly harassed by anti-fans. At one point, a man went as far as to actually squirt a mixture of vinegar and soy sauce directly into her eye, causing damage to her corneas and forcing her to wear an eye patch. What even drives a person to do this crap? It's gotten to the point where idols can't even trust the food their staff members gift them. Since back in 2006, Yoonho from TVXQ drank what he assumed to be orange juice from a staff member, but in reality, the drink contained super glue, causing him to vomit blood before fainting. Though they only get worse. Anti-fan attacks aren't just limited to physical ones. When Jay Park was leaving the K-pop group 2PM, anti-fans became so infuriated that they created a petition calling for his suicide. Before it was actually deleted, the petition had 3,000 votes. The worst thing is, these attacks also end up affecting everyone around the idol as well. Since when this idol used to be in the K-pop group g.o.d, Yoon Kai-sang also received a drink from an anti-fan. However, not knowing it was from an anti-fan at the time, he handed it over to his mother, who fell extremely ill soon after. She ended up having to be rushed to the hospital where her stomach had to be pumped. I swear, these garbage people's obsession with ruining the lives of these innocent people is insane. Thankfully though, they don't always come out unscathed. When Tableau revealed that he was accepted to Stanford University, his anti-fans immediately rallied to create a forum claiming he'd faked getting his diploma. Now, obviously he didn't, but these people were so determined to destroy this poor guy's reputation that they harassed him and his family members for 2 entire years about this. However, by the end of it, these pieces of trash didn't get their wish, with Tableau still going to Stanford just fine. And for once, the worst even got jail sentences. I have never been so excited to say that someone got put in prison. Honestly, I cannot even fathom the stress of being a K-pop idol. You really do have to respect these people for dealing with daily death threats and harassment like this. If any of you out there, and I mean any of you, actually go this far to cause turmoil and stress in someone's life, I just have to ask, what in the actual hell is wrong with you? I swear, in one case, just because an idol began dating another idol from another group, they were actually sent letters containing razor blades and death threats. If you hate the people so much, just stop listening to their music. And to the vast majority who consistently support idols for their hard work, I say good on you. You all are what makes a fandom worth being in. Though if you're familiar with K-pop's plethora of fandoms, then you'll notice that I left out 2 explicit groups in this video. Well, that's because considering how much there is to cover in the K-pop fandom, I'll have to split this one up into 2 parts. And I assure you that in part 2, along with anything I couldn't fit into this video, I'll be covering that fandom war in great detail, mark my words. Because I swear, out of any fandom war I've ever seen, the constant fighting between the fans of BTS and EXO is absolutely crazy. Though as always, a huge thanks to everyone who has sent me their fandom stories via the Twitter DMs. Do keep sending them my way. And while I'll only be featuring my favorite fandom stories from the comments of my last fandom files in part 2, this time around leave me your pointers and recommendations on what else I should cover in part 2. Considering how massive the K-pop fandom is, I'm sure I missed something. And hey, you know what? If you want me to go ahead and release the video in 1 week rather than 2, leave a like. If you guys really do want it, I'll ignore the bi-weekly rule just this once. And to hold you over until part 2, check out the playlist I've made for the entire Fandom Files series. There's no easier way to lose your faith in humanity. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, do subscribe, and today's cool thing of the day is Daydream by J-Hope. Now with every fandom I cover, I always like to not only immerse myself in the fandom, but the source material as well. And out of all the K-pop I've heard so far, this one is a personal favorite for sure. Though honestly, that'll probably change as I listen to more K-pop. So that being said, I'm the RPG Monger, and don't forget that each and every one of you are fantastic.